In the meantime, I'll contact the joint. Me and the house broad are tight. It's a cinch you can place your grief tomorrow. The buyer said, Jack, you know I deserve some cooperation. I'll try anything to break even on that dog. I'll call you at noon. I ain't salty with you now. Let's split and make the scene at the lair. I'll pop for a couple of rounds. The buyer stood up. He knocked his knuckles against the log. The cute Mexican broad came toward him to check him out. She stood before him. She was smiling. The seller drained his glass and stood. He leaned across the log, staring at her bosom. I was digging the action from that trap door in the corner of my eye. She said, Both tabs come to $12. Yours is $7. Your friend's is $5. The buyer said, I've got 'em both. Here's a double saw. Keep the change, miss. Bet I get you. Say, girl, was that bum your father who brought you in when you started to work here last night? Ain't you afraid I'll salt and pepper you and eat you raw? She said, No, not my father, my husband. He's no bum. He had on his work clothes. People are not good to eat. It's not nice to eat people. Thanks for the tip. Come back soon. The buyer hurled his beak toward the ceiling and laughed. Flakes of grayish-white dust clung to the hairs in his nostrils. He had snorted and loaded his skull with H. Her mouth was still smiling. Her big black eyes had slitted in Latin fury. She turned away toward the register. She punched it. She came back. She stood staring at the buyer. She had a fin and 3 slats in her hand. She was crushing them into a missile. In the mirror, I saw the seller shaking his head as he walked out the door. The buyer was looking at her like the 8 slats had made her his indentured slave. The 4-carat stone in his left hand flashed like a neon as he caressed his fly. He said, If that tramp was your man, I'm stealing you. Shit, I should kidnap you right now. You ain't got no business juggling suds. Bitch, you got a mint between your big hairy legs. I'm gonna show you how to make $1,000 a week. I ain't never wanted nothing and didn't get it. Bitch, I'm gonna get you. I'll be back at 4 to pick you up. A massive black bulk with a face like a rabid bulldog had come on the scene. It had to be the joint bouncer. He was standing several feet behind the buyer, grinning like a starved croc. He was hunching his shoulders. The Mexican broad was shaking. She fired the missile. It struck the buyer on the tip of his beak. He threw his hands across his face. She shouted, You stupid, ugly filth! You insane nigger bastard! Do you think I'd let you touch me? I wouldn't shit in your mouth to save your slimy life. If you ever look at me again, I'll cut your heart out. The bouncer streaked toward the buyer like a howitzer shell. His feet clickety-clacked like the wheels of an express train against the parquet floor. He viced the buyer's rear end through the tail split in his topcoat. He seized the scrawny neck with his other giant paw. The buyer was almost airborne. The tips of his shoes did a tap dance against the floor on his way to the door. The joint was silent. The buyer swiveled his head back toward the angry tamale. Just before he skidded toward the sidewalk, he screamed, You square-ass, greasy, chili gut bitch! I'm gonna triple-cross you! The joint got back on jump time. The combo started to riff, mood indigo. I thought about the run. The Mexican broad had her hands on her hips. She was looking at me. She wanted me to say the buyer was a no-good bastard. She didn't know I was up as a pledge in his club. I put a deuce on the log and walked out. It was 2:30 in the a.m. I walked to the corner. Preston had been right. Poison's black hole was standing in front of the liquor store. She hit on me. That terrible beating she had taken sure hadn't cured her bad habit. She said, Hi, Slim. Give me 10 and sock it in. I won't put the rush on you, handsome. Cop a jug and let's go freak off. I jerked my head away from the sight of her like she was Medusa. I put my dogs in high gear and crossed the street. I had a quick vision of Poison's 13s giving me a buttache. I got into the Ford and made a U-turn. I was going to the Runt and some DOS. I caught Preston in my headlights on the turn. He was still out there trying to make the Greek richer. He waved. I honked. The mercury had fallen, the icy streets like a ski run. Less than a mile from the roost, I saw a clean front of a hotel. The blue neon sparkled out. Blue Haven Hotel. I went into the blue and red lobby. A broad was on the desk. She had a razor slash on her tan cheek. She had the build and a wrapper of a heavyweight wrestler. She said, "You want something permanent or just for the night?" I said, "How much are permanent pads? I want the best you got. Whatever it is, it's got to be on the front with a view." She said, "The best single rooms are $32.50 a week. The best 3-room apartments are $100 a week." She got up and went to the red board behind her. She took several keys off and gave them to me. The elevator operator was an old stud reading a Wild Maggie and Jiggs comic book. He was whistling When the Saints Go Marching In. His peepers were glued to it like maybe he had found the map to the Lost Dutchman. I got off on the 3rd floor. I looked at 2 single rooms. The carpet in them was stained and the furniture was battered. This was an underworld hotel, all right. I could smell the odor of gangster grass in the hallways. I took the stairs to the 4th floor. I looked into 2 apartments. I went for the second one. It was freshly decorated in gold and black paint. The furniture was blonde and new. It was spotless and flashy. The gold-draped front window gave a wide view of the stem. The pad was perfect for now. It would do until I bit the big time with the big stable. I went to the elevator and pressed the down button. The floor indicator dial was stuck between floor number 2 and 3. I took the stairs down. I figured the antics of Maggie and Jiggs had put a lot of pressure on the old joker. Some whore in the hotel was probably down there with the old coot. They were maybe using the comic book as a guide. I went to the desk. I registered and paid a week's rent in advance. I put the key in my pocket and went to the Ford. I drove toward the Runt. I saw a black whore leading a white man into the front door of the Martin Hotel, 100 yards from the Haven. The Runt could take her good tricks there. It was 4 a.m. when I got there. I parked and went up the hotel stairs. An elevated train shook the stairway as it passed. Its shadow leaped through the second-floor window and plunged like a rattling, speeding ghost across the hall. I turned left to number 20. I twisted my key in the lock and stepped inside. The Runt was wide-eyed. She leaped from the bed. She had on red baby doll pajamas. She squeezed herself hard against me. She acted like I had been gone a year. She said, "Oh, Daddy, I'm so glad you're back. I was worried like hell. Where have you been? Do you love me as much as I love you? Did you miss me? I'd die if anything ever happens to you." A heart-aching montage tornadoed through my skull. I gritted my teeth. I felt my fingernails ice-picking into my palms. The Runt's love calm had resurrected sad old scenes. I saw poor Black Henry. He was on his knees blubbering his love for Mama. I saw his pitiful eyes begging Mama not to break his heart. I saw Mama kicking herself free of his clutching arms. I saw that terrible look of scorn and triumph on Mama's face. I thought about the worms that had devoured his flesh on his lonely grave. I shuddered and punched the Runt with all my might against the left temple. On impact, needles of pain threaded to my elbow. She moaned and shot backward onto the bed. She bounced like she was on a trampoline. There was a crunching, pulpy thud on the second bounce. She'd crash face first on the steel edge at the foot of the bed. She just lay there, breathing hard. I moved to the foot of the bed. I grabbed a fistful of hair. I turned her face toward me. Her eyes were closed, and there was a bloody gash just above her right eyebrow. I went to the face bowl and drew a pitcher of cold water. I doused her full in the face. Her eyes flickered open. She just lay, looking up at me. A scarlet trickle ran down her cheek across her chin. She stroked the side of her face. She saw the blood. Her eyes full-mooned. Her mouth was open. I stood looking down at her. The guts in my scrotum were twisting. I could feel hot currents firing up that generator at the base of my weapon. Then she said, "Why, Daddy? Why did I get my ass whipped? Are you high or what?" I said, "Bitch, if I have you 100 years, don't ever ask me where I've been. Don't ever try to play that bullshit love con on me. We're not squares. I'm a pimp, you're a whore. Now get up and keep a cold towel on that eyebrow." She got up and stood at the wash bowl, washing the blood off. Her big eyes were staring at me through the mirror. I didn't know she had started to keep a revenge score on her skull. 7 years later, she would tally up and happily cross me into prison. She sat on the side of the bed, pressing a towel against the wound. I got in the sack in the raw. 15 minutes, the leak had stopped. It was now only a small puckered slash. She crawled in beside me, nibbled at my ear. That lizard did cross-country laps and then took the boss trek around the world. I lay there silently. I was trying to figure the real reason why I had slugged her. I couldn't find the answer. My thoughts were hamstrung by the razor edge of conscience. She whispered, "Daddy, do you feel like tying me down? Please? I want you to." I said, "Bitch, you got a one-track mind. I'm going to tie you down like a sow in a slaughterhouse. After you get your rocks off, I'm going to give you the rundown on that stem you're working tonight. Get on your back, stretch your legs out and put your arms above your head. That's right, you sweet freak bitch."